Hi. Um, I I'm sorry if this seems simplistic or boring or whatever, but this may be the last video I do on the channel. I don't know. I found out this morning. Well, I found out last night. I was talking with somebody. It was a childhood friend, um, and I felt very relieved about something. A 30 something year thing that I wondered about that affected me. And people have asked. What I found out um, was a good theoretical explanation for what happened because it did affect me greatly. And people have asked me over the years why I felt so emotionally, well, the way they would put it, why it bothered me so much, or why something 30 years ago would bother me like that, or I should just move on. But I wanted to do a video where I look back, and I've mentioned some of these things before, and I'll see how long I can talk before I stop in order to edit and start recording again. Um, it's about somebody I've nicknamed Punky Brewster, a real person I grew up with, and I'm trying very hard. I'm sorry if I've given clues. It's very hard to talk about somebody um, without giving away too much and indicating who that person is. Um, what I'm going to say soon will make this statement statement make more sense. But I hope that I think that um, there there's an inner soul to somebody. I like to think there's an inner soul to somebody, and there's like an outer shell, and that the inner soul would say, "I understand," or I well, that the inner soul of this person would understand why. Um, I think the outer soul. I think the outer shell is something about the outer shell that I think I just found some possible explanation as to why the outer shell was the way it was um, last night. I can't say for sure, so I don't know, but at least it gives it jibes with everything I've I've known about the person before, all the interactions we've had before, and I'd like to think that the inner soul still still thinks I'm an okay person. Um, I not just about this person, but I want to explain the other things. I want to tie together the other things I've talked about in videos on this channel. I guess it's a sum up video. Makes some sense if it's a sum up video, and if I don't make any more videos, I don't know about the future of this channel. Um, Driving home, I I've been under a lot of stress this past last week um, because of something else, and I don't want to go into that. But it's just very stressful, and I don't know if people can understand. Um, I I tend to not display like symptoms of something like when I have a cold or flu or something. My mom pointed out that I don't tend to exhibit any signs of sickness. I could look healthier than I really am, and I think mentally under stress, I think it may be that way too, that I um, I have a high threshold for calmness, calm demeanor, and um, some inner stress inside. I don't necessarily show it outwardly. Okay, um, I want to go all the way back um, to senior year. I want to go further back. I want to say that about the relationship with my mom. She had heard voices, disturbing, harassing voices, since 1985 when I was 9, and then, well, actually, I was just about to turn 10. um, and it wasn't just heard voices. I mean, it was like several decades until she died in 2000, the end of 2018. Um, it was just a regular thing that I had to put up with. Um, she could be very calm in all other respects. She was very nice and she was nurturing. She was exceptionally nurturing, and I think um, I had a special relationship with. I was lucky. I feel fortunate to have had a special relationship with my mom that other people, I guess, don't have. Um, I could either one of us could feel comfortable going to the other person and expressing what was on their minds, no matter what the problem was or how embarrassing or what. Um, and I remember going over to my mom, and sometimes um, when I was going through some problem, and she would sometimes put her hand on my shoulder, sometimes not, and she would say, "How can I, Jeff? How can I make it you feel better?" Or how can we fix this so it's better? And that's what I grew up with. And I have to also explain that I grew up on watching shows like Star Trek, where the characters were like a family. It was a team on a starship, and they encountered real difficulty. High levels of difficulty in the show, and um, they had each other's backs, so to speak, as the phrase goes. Um, but they trusted each other, and they believed in the best of each other. And overall, the show itself um, implied some sense of hope for humanity, and that people are, for the most part, decent and good and kind-hearted. And I would watch Dick Van Dyke Show. It was a comedy. It was a more or less realistic. It was a well-written show, and they liked each other, and the characters respected each other. And Leave It to Beaver and the Munsters, and you name the show. Basically, that's what I grew up on. And I had a nurturing mom, and we could talk about a lot of different topics. She was very smart, and she went to Bronx High School of Science, and then Cornell undergraduate, and then Yale graduate school, and then MIT. And then she graduated like half a year early. I remember that. And then she worked on one of the first models of computers. Um, and she earned a PhD. And she was in Boston, I think, when she joined Mensa. Her brother had joined Mensa. She found her future husband, my father, in Mensa. And so it was, and she and I went through hardships together. My father wasn't in the picture. I think I'm I'm trying to figure out what happened in the past. Maybe in retrospect, now that I say that, that too is something. That's another example of something I'm trying to figure out in my past that greatly affected me. Um, I lived with my mom and dad in Boston or Somerville or whatever. I was born in Boston um, until about age 5 or 6, and then my mom, and I don't really remember any of this, but this is due to reconstruction of facts and documents I found. It seems that my mom took me and went to Canada suddenly, and I think my dad was trying to find her, and I went by a different last name, Egan, when I was in probably Ontario. I know in Winnipeg for a year, my first grade year. I didn't go to kindergarten. I don't think so. It doesn't seem like I went to kindergarten. And then we went. Um, she went. She took me to like Albany and then to Binghamton. And I remember my dad visiting when I was in Binghamton. He was Irish Catholic, a devout Irish Catholic. I don't think the two really got along together well enough to remain a married couple. I I know for sure that they were married, and they were married a month before I was born. My mom had me late in life. I think she was 42, something like that. My dad, she was born in 1933, and my dad was born in 1926. Actually, November 15th, I think, 1926. As I recall, it was a day after my birthday. So he visited probably, well, perhaps a total of 5 times in my entire life. So in the last 30 years, some of that 30 years has been spent trying to reconstruct all this. Sorry. Um, so that was the environment that I was in. My mom didn't have that much, but she made sure she sacrificed and made sure that I had, I lived in somewhat relative comfort. Um, I remember promising sometimes when I would want something, my mom would ask if I would be okay with eating peanut butter sandwiches for a while to cut costs so we could afford that. That shows that we weren't wealthy. We weren't upper middle class. But my mom did buy me some toys, and a lot of times they were from garage sales. But she did everything she could to make sure that I I my perception of my childhood was calm and happy and nice, and and I had good friends, and and then when I was at school, I was in a safe, protected place, and and then um first grade, I went to second grade. I was in Wetzel Road, and I should mention, I guess at this point, I guess we wouldn't mind. I was friends with Pete, and Brett was in my class, and Jack, and there were girls too. Beth. Beth was looked cute, although at that point I wasn't really that attract. I wasn't like going through adolescence yet, and those were the kids. And I remember on recess, um, I didn't have much to afford buying Transformers like the other kids, but I remember in recess, running around, and I felt accepted. I don't remember whether I felt rejected back then at that school or not. And this ultimately plays into what I'm getting at. Trust me. I had to move. My mom had to move, and it was hard on me at the time, even though it wasn't moving that far. I would go to a different school. It felt to me like I was moving forever. I would subsequently be able to take a bus down there. It was a big trip to go back to my friend's house to visit. Um, but anyway, I went to a new school. It was Liverpool Elementary School. Um, just as fourth grade had just begun, and I made John was a new close friend. I should say that I didn't. I had acquaintances, like classmates that didn't know me very well, just knew of me, and there were interactions in school and sometimes outside of school. Like I would see the person around town, and then there was John, who was a close friend, and we would go visit each other's houses. Um, and there was also Peter, who was a close friend. So the way I have been, I've had a few close friends, and I've just had acquaintances slash classmates. I was polite and respectful to everybody. Um, I remember being teased and mocked in elementary school to the point where sometimes I didn't want to go. Um, I remember being bullied. I remember being picked on, especially. And I remember Punky Brewster. I don't remember what she did, but I remember her thinking well, thinking well of me, and always associated her with cheering me up. And there were other kids, and I remember crying a number of times. I remember nobody seeming to, well, I was about to say understand me, but I don't know whether they understood me or not. It wasn't a matter of understanding. I think it was more like um, they just reacted oddly around me. Um, I remember crying and confiding in teachers and so forth, and I thought of girls and women as being nurturing types and easier to approach. And I think my closeness with my mom is part of that. And so then we started middle school, and I anticipated to be dating. I didn't really date in elementary school. I don't know if anybody ever did, but but there were some weird things where girls were playing games on me, I think, or pretending that they wanted to go out with me. I don't think they were really serious. And I mentioned that in a prior video, I'm pretty sure, quite sure. So um, then high school, and I still felt out of, like, the other kids didn't want me around, or they felt weird around me. Um, that's a mixed bag. Um, Maybe that's too harsh. I guess they would ask me questions a lot. I remember in middle school, I remember kids asking me personal questions, and I liked the attention, and I also liked uh, being sure that I liked the opportunity to be able to explain where I came from and what was what was going on with me, because then they could better understand me and so forth. That plays a part later on in this video, what I'm going to talk about, what I'm leading up to. I like talking, explaining myself to them, or explaining where I came from, or what I liked in terms of TV or toys, or what my opinions on something were. Um, And so, anyway, good, it's still recording. There's a screensaver that pops up, which you wouldn't know about because obviously wouldn't show up in the recording. Um, so, in high school, there really wasn't a lot of asking me questions, I don't think. I looked forward to graduating. I didn't feel any connection or kinship with the other kids. What they seemed to be interested in seemed very petty. They seemed to be interested in drinking beer, going to parties, getting wasted. It seemed to be like something like that, or riding around. And plus, some of the teasing probably also was a factor in pushing me away, like mentally, like making me not want to try to fit in. So in senior year, um, junior year and senior year, um, I had some nice experiences. I should talk about the UFO experience. Um, I'd been interested in adult book. I was reading at an adult level, even when I was a child, and I had been interested in reading about UFOs. I don't mean the flaky stuff. I mean serious stuff. I don't know at this point whether UFOs really exist, but I still think that there's a live substance, something, either it's all psychological phenomenon, in which case it still is interesting to study, or if there's something about our reality that's weird, it's still interesting to study. Anyway, um, my mom probably read it in a newsletter from Mensa that somebody who has a carefully curated, I guess, a carefully a library at OCC that on UFO material that was carefully weeded out. The flaky stuff was weeded out. He was very determined to keep it academically rigorous, as he would call it. So he gave a lecture to Mensons, and they, from what he said, they didn't seem to appreciate it. But anyway, I found out about it from my mom, who had read probably in a Mensa newsletter, and so I contacted him. This would have been like the winter of '92, and I was in probably 10th or 11th grade, something like that. And so I, so then blah, 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 blah. I got a chance to meet somebody new when he drove me to Cornell for 2 lectures. That was the first time I met somebody who had written books on UFOs. It was at Cornell, and I got to walk around Cornell, and I felt I felt like a new life, like mature, like I'm in more of an adult world, like the way a kid would feel more mature and like an adult, fitting in like an adult when the kid is invited to an adult party or something. Like the kid would feel grown up. So here I was as a teenager amidst adults in a field that I had studied, and I didn't know anybody else really personally who was interested in UFOs, so I never got a chance to talk with anybody. And here I am in a crowd of people, and they weren't making fun of me. They were accepting me, and I could just sit there and watch the lecturer talk. And I almost and afterwards I got to eat dinner with them some of them in a restaurant. It was for 2 nights. Anyway, then coming up, I was I had done my Eagle Scout project, which would go towards earning my Eagle Scout rank. That would be the final rank in Boy Scouts, and very few people make it to Eagle. And that was mine was cleaning up after the flood of '93, so that was afterwards. You can see this stuff is building up, like there my life is picking up, and new things were coming into my life. And I had started writing scripts for television. My mom would help me send them to production studios. Married with Children and Star Trek: The Next Generation and Night Court and so forth. And I felt separate from the other kids in school. I didn't think that any of them were as advanced as I was in terms of preparing for a serious career after high school, after college. I wanted to become actually at that point, not a filmmaker. I wanted to become a television creator, a television writer on staff, and then create my own TV shows. And then close to Valentine's Day, I wrote a poem, a long poem, and I have already mentioned I'm a creative type and I'm a writing person. And so I wrote it. I wrote the poem well. I was inspired by, with artistic creativity. I don't know how to phrase it. I was proud of how creative I was in the poem. I was inspired by the guest on a radio talk show. Back then, it wasn't right-wing media all the time. The Jim Bohannon show. Jim Bohannon had on at night, had on a guest plugging her book called The Love Code. I think it was Janet O'Neill. And it was one of these books about how to find your true match for men, and was another section for women. And things were looking up. I was hopeful. I wanted to make somebody happy. I wanted to make a lucky girl happy. To open up, to have this nice Valentine's Day. Of course, for me, I wanted to be creative, so I wrote it as a poem. And went into school the next school day, and I almost gave it to somebody named Cheryl, who was nice. I think because she was in my homeroom class. Homeroom before first period. And I probably had gym that day in first period, and then it was boys only. So second period, I go into the writing class, and I see Punky Brewster 2 seats in front of me, and I give it to her, and I didn't get any response, and I waited a month, and then there was a 94 days till graduation breakfast that you could go to before school. It was voluntary. It was just for our class that was graduating, because it was 1994. That was 94 days until graduation breakfast. And I sat down, and usually when I would be eating lunch, I would just sit alone, because I didn't really feel like I fit in with the other kids. There was no sense of kinship. I guess maybe it was mutual. I just didn't fit in. Afterwards, I learned from them, some of them, that they thought that I was very smart and kind and a good, decent person. And one of them said that she wished that she had talked to me when we were in school. Wish I had known that back then. So I sat down. I felt more. I don't know. I can't exactly figure out what triggered it, but I guess just simply because the fact that it was graduation year, I wanted to open up more, and I wanted to demonstrate. Primarily, I distinctly remember this. I wanted to demonstrate that I'm not a nerd. I'm not a geek or a moron. I'm not somebody that shies away. I'm not some basket case in the corner. Well, nobody would call me a basket case, but like I wasn't aloof. I wasn't. I wanted to show my personality. I wanted to introduce myself to them after 3.5 years or something, or some case like all school year. This is I wouldn't be seeing these kids again. I mean, some of them I grew up with since elementary school. I wanted to show them who I really was and open up. And I remember having seen Back to the Future at that point. And I remember George McFly. And I remember a lot of movies where people open up, like you can sympathize with the main character and you root for the main character as an underdog. And I remember George McFly, and I remember how much it meant to him. I can project, I can imagine, like, anybody who's seen Back to the Future would probably understand. Like, I mean, I don't even remember what Jane or whatever her name was, and he had a secret crush, and he was picked on a lot, and he didn't really talk. I'm guessing he didn't really talk much in school. So in my case, I wanted to open up and I wanted to show them that I wasn't a nameless face that couldn't didn't know how to have a good time. I I I knew of other ways to have a good time besides drinking beer and getting drunk and making fun of other people. I was mature, but that didn't mean that I wasn't a good-natured person who was smart and who could really, if you knew me, you would benefit a lot from friendship with me. And so so I'm sitting there in 94 days till graduation in the cafeteria, and there were two girls. I don't remember the second girl, but one of them was Jamie. I guess maybe I shouldn't mention the last name, but Jamie. And she we were talking, and then Punky Brewster comes by and she says hi. Like, she didn't say hi really to me deeply. She just came over and casually said hi to us. That's how I remember it. And then she walked away eventually, and then I told Jamie that I had written this poem, and I had been one. And this, remember, I said this had been a month. Um, I figured it out. It had been a month because in those 30 years since then, I figured out a timeline. I figured out February, and then 94 days till graduation would have been sometime in March. So it would have been a month of waiting and wondering. And like anybody, any creative type, you're eager for positive feedback or any feedback. Mainly you like positive feedback. You just, you expect somebody to give feedback relatively soon. But I was patient, and I think she said, if I remember correctly, that Jamie, that she either was with Punky when she read the poem, or she heard from Punky about the poem, or in some sense she heard about the poem. And I think as I recall, maybe she, I sort of recall it as she said, Punky liked the poem. So I was puzzled as to why Punky didn't call me back or say anything like, didn't make some effort to say, thanks, Jeff. I really appreciated that. I like the poem, and I really appreciate you giving it to me. Maybe she would have said I'm already dating somebody, But I mean, it seems a decent thing to do. But I figured, okay, maybe it's just awkwardness, and now I know, and I'm happy. And so, um, I don't remember exactly how, but I, I, I got an indication from Punky that it was okay to give her more poems or letters. Um, After that, so in class, writing class, I would um I wouldn't make a big thing out of it. I was very respectful. I would like write something I had written like the prior day, and I mean evening, and it made me really feel very happy to be able to write something I hadn't dated at all. I didn't think any girl would be interested in me. And finally I had a chance to give some popular girl that I thought was out of my league. For years I thought, well, she liked my poem, and I could give her something that was really nice, and um and thoughtful. And I felt, and I put more creativity in what I wrote. And then sometimes there were conversational letters, sometimes they were poems, sometimes it was just a drawing. I would just maybe put it on her desk at writing class desk, maybe, or hand it to her without making a big scene out of it. Just hand it to her as I was walking by. Sometimes she would smile. I'm proud. She probably said thanks, Jeff, or smiled, and then I didn't say anything about it afterwards. It was her private stuff. I'm happy that she was receptive. I'm happy that she seemed happy to be getting the letters, and that she seemed to appreciate getting the letters and poems. And then um I started to call. I looked her I probably went to the phone book. I looked up her last name and figured out where she lived. And so I would call sometimes to see if maybe we could talk. I guess I should. This video is therapeutic. I because it reminded me that's the way I would relate to my male friends. I remember Peter. I would call and we would talk a long time. Even after I moved, we would talk for what seemed like hours. It was probably like an hour and a half or something. And that's how we would relate. I was comfortable on talking on the phone, and John the same way. We would talk a long time, just conversationally, and so I felt comfortable. I wanted to talk to Punky, especially that it was outside of school hours, so we it would be a better time to call, and I didn't want to interfere with her stuff in school. She was never home, or somebody would say that she was out or whatever. And so I remember trying to fluctuate when I would call to try and catch like a better time to reach her. And I remember some things that I still probably shouldn't get into because it would reveal who she is. Not that it probably hasn't spilled the beans already anyway. Um, I had been. Sometimes I had thought, as I said before, like it's been stressful this past week, and I remember I've had a fleeting thought of like like revenge, like she would be remorseful if I no longer lived. Um, and I I should say I don't have any plans to do anything to myself. Um, but I've had that thought sometimes. It's not frequently, but like when I'm dwelling on this, um, or when something causes me to dwell on this, um, thought that thought has passed through, just to something that would get her to realize how much it emotionally affected me. I'll get to that. So, um, so I began getting puzzled as to why she wasn't making any effort. All right, so that was March when the breakfast was, and then um, I probably at that point I started thinking about the senior ball, and I had not gone to any date. The last time there was one exception, which was in I think eighth grade. Yeah, it was eighth grade, middle school, where I went to. I think that was a St. Valentine's Day dance. I went to a dance after school hours, and I felt very proud of myself for having done that. I think the adults felt very proud that um, I had done that. I had like stepped out of my shell, and I had done that. And I don't remember who the girls were, but I remember they were dressed up very nicely, fancy, stuff. And I danced with some girls, and I remember in the yearbook, some girl writing, "You dance very well," and I remember that was a reference back to when I took that shot, and I stepped out of my shell to do that. So um um so I I was calling, and I was hoping to be able to reach her, and I never did. And so sorry. So it became May, and I think it was towards the end of May, um, that I had talked to other people about wanting to ask out Punky to the senior ball, and I even wanted to make a dress for her to wear. Um, and I got this reaction from I remember his name was Samer in my math class, same math class, and he reacted like, "You taking out Punky?" And like as if it seemed weird. And I thought at the time it was because he seemed like I thought it was because he was may have been thinking that Punky seemed more like one of them, and I was more of an outsider that wouldn't fit in. But in retrospect, um, maybe it was more like a compliment towards me. I've thought about this over time. That maybe he was thinking that I came across as well adjusted. Not that Punky wasn't well adjusted, didn't come across as well adjusted. I'm saying that maybe it was a compliment towards me. The way he reacted was more like a guy. His questioning tone, like you take out her. Maybe it was more like that I was I was different enough from her that maybe I had some advantages, or I was maybe I was more sociable, maybe in some sense. Maybe I don't know. At the time, anyway, I took it as I came across as an outsider, and he wondered why somebody popular like that would go out with me. So anyway, um, I called and finally reached her. It was a Saturday, and I might as well spill the beans on everything. Um, I had I'd been confused at this point. This may have been this is probably the point when I started reaching out to people from my past. I remember I'd gone on an Israel trip, and I still kept that blue list of everybody going to the trip that we had gotten before the trip. We got a list of people and where they lived, and the bulk of them lived in New York City. Some of them were from the same temple I went to. It was a youth group, a Jewish youth group. Some of them from our Syracuse temple were on the trip, but the majority were outside. They were from New York City and New Jersey, and at least a couple from Connecticut. So, I should say you probably figured out already. I don't have any siblings. I didn't grow up with siblings, so I tend to bond very well with other kids, especially friendly kids, and um, I felt some kinship, but I felt some friendship with them because actually, I guess I should go back. When I was going on the trip, I didn't expect them to accept me because my experiences with kids my age were that they don't accept me into their group. They exclude me, or they make fun of me or whatever. But this group, they really respected me, and that made a really lasting impression on me. That during this group, they listened to me, and they I don't want to say understood. They I could talk with them, and they talked with me like I was on their level, same level, and I fit in. So anyway, I kept that, and I don't remember who else I reached out to, people from my past, but I was trying to fill a void because already I was noticing that it seemed like a swan. I remember at one point I wrote a poem and I called the Swan Song because to Punky Brewster because it seemed like I wasn't she wasn't being receptive. She was it wasn't reciprocal. So I wrote in there something like I in so many words it was to the effect of I I can't keep going like this. I don't know if you like me or not. I don't know why you're not responding in some way other than the smiles or thanks, Jeff, or what. But yet I kept going anyway with doing it, and it wasn't a swan song letter. Um, and then I called and so I had a tape recorder. I knew how to record a phone conversation, so I took a recording I had made, a cassette I had made. I recorded off TV. I mean, it's audio, so I held it next to the TV. I had recorded the premiere episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it was the episode. It was the premiere, and I remember during that, my mom, who would hear harassing voices from the neighbors. I remember her shouting, cut it out, creep! Stop it! You stop it, murderer!" That was just typical. That was normal. Um, she was shouting at the neighbors, the neighbors she could hear, "Cut it out, murderer! Stop it! You stop it, creep!" I wanted me to get the police. It was just normal. I adored from 1985 until 2018. That was just normal. Sometimes in conversation, like my mom and I would be talking, then all of a sudden she would say, "Excuse me, cut it out, murderer, stop it." Um, And I remember we'd write notes. She was very something. She had this thing about privacy, and we would have to write notes to each other instead of talking aloud about private things that she didn't want the neighbors to hear. Um, anyway, so I took this tape cassette and I sacrificed that. I just wanted some recording of of if I reached Punky, I just wanted something, some souvenir, so I could play back when I felt lonely. I could play it and just hear her voice and hear the conversation. Um, so she was cheerful. She was happy. She referred to the song I had written for her, and it was just nice, happy conversation. And then that was Saturday, and then I called Sunday, and I asked if she was. I started right off the bat at the beginning by saying there's somebody I want to ask to the senior ball, and she didn't know who it was, and she said, "Well, tell me who it is, and I'll tell you whether she likes you or not." So I said it's her, and then she said that she wasn't going to the ball, and that um, I may kill myself after. I don't know. I mean, after I mentioned all this, I thought crossed my mind like I mentioned a lot of what I've been holding back these 30 years. I thought about writing it down like in a journal and so forth. Well, if I pass away, if anybody wants to know what happened, I'm mentioning more about what happened so that people would know. So I, there was a tone in her voice like, "Oh no, I'm not going." And then she said she'd written me a letter, and she had been hesitating to give it to me, and I won't go any further than that. But she talked a little bit further. I won't mention what she said. Essentially, she wasn't going, and I felt okay. I felt happy I could still talk with her, and I I wanted to cheer her up. She seemed sad, and I couldn't understand what was wrong, but I wanted to cheer her up the way she cheered me up. And then it was really touching. I haven't thought about it in a long time, but maybe 10 years or 15 years. But I um I said I want to cheer you up the way you make me feel happy. I want to make you happy the way you make me feel happy. I think those are my direct words. I remember because I would play the both tapes, both sides of the tape, over and over, trying to figure out what went wrong, and trying to understand all this. Um, in the subsequent months, and I'll explain why. Um, so it felt really nice. She said I did make her happy, and maybe I should leave it at that in terms of what she said, mentioning what she had said. Um, um, so how do I edit this out? I'm like in my mind, I'm mentally editing this out, trying to remember, plus filtering and editing out what I shouldn't say, have respect to privacy and so forth. So, um, I guess the phone call was deeper. I remember as being deeper than the one on Saturday, the day before. and I felt happy that I was able to talk with her even though I couldn't take her to the senior ball. I was happy I could at least talk with her. I remember at one point I asked, well, sometime, I call and you're not home, and she said, well, a lot of times she works, so she's not at home. Okay, that's a sensible explanation. And she said, you know my number, you know where I live. I asked what color her house was because I remember taking the bus home and I would look around. I knew where the address was, the number in the street, but it's hard to tell, when the bus is just going by a street, exactly which house number it was. So um, I had a guess as to which one it was, and she said the color of the house, and that matched what the color of the one I thought it was. So um, I um, she said, "You know where I live?" Like it was like she was saying in so many words. I don't remember exactly what the words were, but she was saying, "Well, you can visit whenever you want. Like you can call me. You know where I am. You know where I live." And that was very nice. It was all. I don't know how to word this. I want to say it's all I ever wanted. Um, it's like a attractive girl, nice, popular, but yet I was seeing a side of her that wasn't just popular. I'd always seen a side of her that was kind and so forth, but she, especially in middle school onward, she seemed focused on popularity, or she seemed to want to be seemed to want to be amongst the popular group. Um, so it was nice that she was open, not just open minded. She was accepting of me, and she there wasn't any mockery. They weren't. She wasn't making fun of me. Um, so I felt happy. I don't remember. The phone call eventually ended. Um, and then that was in May, and then I remember, or April. Maybe it was April. I don't know. Maybe it was more like April, and then I remember the final episode, the finale, the series finale of Star Trek: The Next Generation, aired in May, and I'd gotten probably something in the mail about earning my Eagle Scout rank. Oh, I remember talking with her on the phone about in turn in recognition of that, somehow I don't remember exactly. In recognition of earning an Eagle rank, I was invited, or I was going to go on the radio, and I mentioned before I would listen to talk radio, WSYR, and I enjoyed that. So it was, I think, Jake and the Fat Man. It was a sister station, Y93Q or something like that. Whatever station was in the same building as 570 WSYR. And I remember there was a Myra or Maya or something, I can't remember, was one of the hosts, longtime hosts, and there was a guy there. And I remember anyway mentioning I'd be on the air, and she asked what time I'd be on the air. So something like if she's home or if she's listening, she'll tune in, which is really nice. And I remember in high school they had a swimming competition in the high school pool where they wanted to break a record, or wanted to set a new record for the number of people participating in swimming, and I was a really good swimmer. I loved to swim. It was that same time, and I loved being a part of the group. I remember I remember going. I think it was probably during gym class or something. We could go that day. We could go to the pool and we could swim. It's probably back and forth a few times or something. And so I sort of felt like part of the group, and I felt accepted. And I remember something. Maybe it was gym class. I remember because writing class was after that in second period, and she was there in writing class. So I just remember her turning to face me. I think standing up, and she was happy for me, or she was like amazed with a happy tone of amazement, and and so um there was that. And then I said before there was the being on the radio, and then and I should say I should talk about the final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. The show premiered when I was in sixth grade, and I had already been an avid watcher, a fan of Star Trek in general, and I've already talked about some of the impact that Star Trek had on me, or how well it jived with me as a person. And of all things they could have picked, um, I'll tell you what the final episode. Now that I started watching The Next Generation in sixth grade when it premiered, and here I am about to graduate high school, as approaching 18, age 18. That's a few years. It's only 7 years, but a huge adjustment in 7 years. And of all things, the episode was about the captain. Again, it's on the Enterprise. There's a crew that trust each other. They're friends and so forth, and they work together. It was about the captain discovering that he saw himself in a future where people were mocking, like there were these creatures that were mocking him, and he couldn't understand why. And he discovers that he's shifting through periods of time from the past to the present to the future, just arbitrarily shifting between those time periods. And he could see people, like all the characters' names you wouldn't understand, but Troy and Riker and Data and Worf and so forth. Names are probably meaningless to anybody who hasn't seen the show. But anyway, he was shifting backwards and forwards through time, and I remember in the future, this future, Troy had been Troy had been dating in the show. Troy in the past had dated Riker, and now Worf in the present. Worf was dating Troy, and felt awkward that Riker was his friend, and now he's dating Troy. And then in the future, Troy was dead, and Worf and Riker had talked to them to each other in 25 years since her death. And I think they mentioned that they had the last time they spoke to each other was at her funeral. So I remember the captain seeing somebody, one of the characters, when he shifts to the past at one point, he's being ferried, piloted by somebody towards this new Enterprise, by somebody who in the first season would die, just suddenly die. and she wasn't a member of the cast, so it was a treat to see the actress come back and to see her play this part in the past. And I remember the captain looks at her and just looks at her face and thinks of her, because she, like, in the course of the show at that point, the character's dead. And um and so he figures out the mystery. There's a character called Q who's causing this time shifting, and Q says he's giving the captain clues if he could just figure it out. And at the end, um, the captain does figure out what's going on, and so at the end, all three time periods just merge together, and there's a flash, and he's sitting in a courtroom alone, and the Q character comes over to him, and there's a glimmer in the captain's face, and the Q seems hopeful about humanity and says, well, for one brief moment, you were able to look beyond linear time, and you were able to grow as a species, and there's a sense of hope. And then the next scene, there's the regular poker table. They're in the show. The other characters, not the captain, but other characters had been seen playing poker sometimes, and there would be a scene where they're playing poker and they're discussing something. Well, in the very final scene of the episode, the 2-hour episode, Picard comes in and sits down, and he looks around, and he says, well, I don't know whether he says 7 years or whatever, but he says, I should have done this a lot sooner. And he starts and then so one of the other characters says, you were always welcome here. And he starts dealing the cards, and he says, aces are wild or whatever, and Joker is wild, and there's a poker expression. It's like jokers are wild, and the sky's the limit. That's it. The sky's the limit. And then it cuts to an external shot, exterior shot. The Enterprise in space, moving towards a sunset. In space, I know there's suns, but you get the artistic license idea that it was moving into the sunset. And of all themes and topics and ideas, they had to pick that one. So that, combined with me thinking about Punky and thinking about having been proud of myself to open up, take some steps to break out of my shell and to open up, really made me feel proud. And so so I continued to write a letter or something to JJ sometime. So I continued to write a letter or something to Punky. And this was in May, the end of May, like May 22nd. And then finals were coming up, and I remember something, O.J. Simpson trial the O.J. Simpson event had occurred, and I wrote a letter. I remember, I'm forgetting about something else. I should, for what it's worth, I remember going over to her house, and she wasn't there, and anyway, I'll just say somebody treated me kindly. I don't want to give anything more about what would identify who she is, but I'll just say when I went over to her house and somebody treated me kindly, accepted me, and I felt very happy about that, and content that even though she did go to the senior ball after all, that I wasn't mad, I wasn't frustrated, I wasn't angry or jealous or envious or confused or whatever. I just accepted that she changed her mind and she went anyway, I guess. So I went home. Okay, then there was an O.J. Simpson event that happened. You could look up what that was. So I wrote a letter for, and I mentioned some um, witty, sarcastic, funny um, thing about that. It like the fact that it seemed like the TV series The Fugitive that they made the movie with Harrison Ford about, and so I joked. I wonder if there's a man with one arm running around somewhere. And so I wrote that. I wrote a letter and I included that. It was a bunch of different conversational stuff. And I walked down and I don't know if I won't get into this. Basically, I had peaceful intentions. Like I um I did something that was I didn't set out to do. I wanted to go over with the letter. Why it was a long walk, and I wanted to. I guess some people know about this thing I'm talking about, but they don't know probably what entirely what happened. So I walked like a long way down there and then a long way back each time. So I walked down. Actually, not that I even went to her house. This is the first. No, it wasn't the first time. It was maybe the third time I'd gone there, or second time, like third time, including that thing where she got into the ball and I talked with somebody else. It would have been like the third time. I went down and with the letter, and I wanted to see her, and I wanted to give her the letter, and so it was something impulsive, and I there was no harm meant at all, but it was totally out of character for me, and I felt like a horrible human being after that. I walked home. I I mean I there was no violence. I'll say there's no violence. There was no screaming. There was no anything. But I did something that I knew was just out of character for me. But I think I was drawn because of the confusion between feeling happy and like being drawn towards her nurturing sense, her nurturing personality, and that she was welcoming and she accepting, and she said you can visit or you can call when you want. I think I was drawn towards that, and then when she wouldn't be on the couldn't be reached on the phone, or she whatever, it's like it was it was like a door slam. A door slam in some sense is best expression for this thing. So I walked home and sad, and then I felt like a zombie, and I was crying, and I felt horrible, like a horrible human being, and I didn't deserve to live. I distinctly remember not just feeling like I didn't deserve to live, and I felt like a zombie. I would just wait out the time until I died. Um, and then I remember the finals were coming up, and I cried through the finals. and I cried through graduation, and I hoped that somebody would notice, take pity, and ask what's wrong. Because in middle school and elementary school, I remember crying when I was being picked on, and I liked the attention that uh, I got when somebody asked what's wrong, because it's like my mom. When I would feel unhappy, my mom would come over and ask what's wrong and how can we fix it? How can we make you feel better? So I wasn't getting that from anybody. Nobody probably noticed. So that summer, I felt like a zombie. I remember taking a bottle of, I remember being in my bedroom. I went to the bathroom and I got some liquids of what I could find, and I got a bottle and I poured the liquids in. I was contemplating drinking it, but I wanted to be sure if I did do it that it would be permanent and I wouldn't be left with scars in an attempted suicide. But for whatever reason, I guess senses came to me, and there was this protective sense and um, good sense about me. I told my mom. I remember one of them was smelled like bleach. I remember the smell of bleach. I told my mom, and I don't remember her really talking about, well, whatever. I already said the S word, but I don't remember her saying the S word. I remember her as just saying, "Okay, let's put this away and let's not do this anymore," something like that. Let's put this away. So it was probably poured down the drain, and I didn't come out to her at all about what happened. I didn't talk openly with anybody about what I was going through for months. It would seem like months, at least during that summer. I kept it to myself. I felt horrible, like I deserved to die. And so college began. I had to take part time. It started in August, which would be a month ahead of the usual September when everybody else would go start college. I remember a lot of people, it seemed, were going out of the area that I had known, so there was a feeling like people were leaving and I was still stuck here, and I wouldn't see any of them anymore. The familiar faces in school I wouldn't see anymore. And I remember Punky calling some Saturday morning, and I think by this point I maybe I had sent a letter or something to her. Um, she calls on a Saturday morning and she says that her dad is not around right now, or not up, or something or other. In other words, it was a private time where she could talk with me, where nobody else was around to hear. So um, I I apologize. I probably apologized, um, and she said she doesn't think that we should have any contact, and she said that I scared her, and I felt really bad about her feeling. I felt really bad that she felt bad or scared or worried or whatever, and I wanted to reassure her that I'm not that kind of person. It was this impulsive thing, and again, I did. There was no anything physical at all. I don't want to go into detail on what happened. It's just, um, it's just something that happened. So she asks me if I was peeking in through her window some other night, and it threw me by surprise. Like, what the heck? I don't know what. I, I don't know. I mean, I know that I don't know where she got that, but I wasn't I wasn't that type of person. I wasn't. I don't do that. So she asked, "Well, how come in this?" And I must have written a poem or something. How come here you mentioned something? I think about her hair or something, and I remember writing that, and I remember it had nothing to do with. I never looked through a window. I never did anything. It was a coincidence. I was being poetic, and I was just imagining her face, and I probably wrote down something that matched. I don't know. So then I asked her at the end again, well, could I at least send you letters or something? And she said yes. She complied, she like hesitantly said yes. So as I remember, um, I I started college. I mentioned that I was starting SU in August, and she expressed happy in a happy tone. She said something to the effect of, "Oh well, good luck to you." And I'm going to, and I can't remember what school it was. Be out of town, and she may be going there for college. I wished her well, and so I started college, and I felt down, and I felt I was commuting. I didn't live in a dorm, so right away that was something too. Um, I felt sad, and I felt like, again, no girl would talk to me. I didn't deserve to have any girl talk to me or be friends with me. And so maybe about that point, maybe a little bit later, I took the cassette, and um, I asked my mom to listen to it. But at that point, I was listening to that tape because that was the only souvenir that I had left of a happier time before that night when I went over to her house. It was a happier time when I could, um, when she was, it was a happier time, blah, blah, blah. So I played that over and over. Sometimes I just would lay in bed, and I remember being not sarcastic. I remember when I was out of bed, I didn't want to really do anything. Um, I remember uh, not showing no interest in anything. Um, and times when I would be in bed, I would just play that over and over, both sides of it, the two phone calls, and one just to reminisce, and two to try and figure out what went wrong, to figure out what she meant by some things. And so my mom listened to it, and I don't remember what she said. Maybe it was because I asked her, because she felt not only was she my mom and it wasn't anybody else, it was kept within the household, like just my mom. She had a uh, high advanced degree in psychology, especially like at MIT. She had I think her PhD um, work, her PhD final project, so to speak, was in perception, how humans perceive things, like visually, how the brain interprets it. So um, I don't remember what she said about the conversations. I think she was probably she probably said that I seemed okay. Like I there was nothing wrong with me. Probably I don't remember what she said exactly, and she didn't give any definite answers. as to what was going. So I guess over time I opened up to her about what had happened pretty quickly, and she was sympathetic towards me, and I could go on about other events, but basically, I think I've said a lot about what I wanted to say. Um, and then eventually, when MySpace became popular, um, I I don't remember who reached. I probably reached out to her first, but it was nice. We hadn't. I don't think we talked to each other in a long time, and I remember. I remember sending messages, nice messages back and forth, and I remember something about I liked mermaids, so I had a mermaid thing on my wall. I mean, on the screen, like my page for MySpace had a painting of a mermaid on it, and she made some like jovial comment about that. She was always jovial, almost always jovial, and then when Facebook became popular, one of us invited the other to be a friend on Facebook. We were both friends on Facebook then, and I remember she had an aquarium, like the digital aquarium, like they had farm, build your farm. You can rack up points. It was a game, online game in Facebook, and I remember her playing that, and I think sometimes I helped her by planning some stuff to give her some points. And I remember, then we had to, my mom and I had to move out in 2015 because my mom's home was not in good condition, and we had to move into another house that was owned by somebody else, so there would be a landlord. And then, so I remember, oh, good, it's a recording. I remember, like Memorial Day, I was in a parade. Would have been before the move. I was in a parade with the Masons. All right, I'm a Mason. I was in a parade with the Masons, and I remember seeing Punky waving, and was very happy to see me. I was very happy to see her, and it during that period of those years, um, I was very happy that there were fleeting moments when I could get like I could see, like, there were fleeting moments when she would show up or she would reply to a message or send a message. It was like once in a blue moon. But I was very thankful and I was happy to get those messages. I always respected her and liked her and appreciated her and thought she was a good person, and um, so it was nice that her waving to me during the thing. I couldn't really. I kept in character because I was holding the flag. I think I was the flag bearer outside during the march, but I I felt flattered. It's the best word. I felt flattered that she publicly um, called out to me as if she wasn't embarrassed to be my friend. Um, so then my mom and I had to move, and I a year before that, my mom had fallen and broken her hip, so I was still concerned about that. And Punky, at some point out of the blue, like it was rare in a blue moon, of course, that she would respond, whatever. But she said that she would look into charities um, for my mom. And I was grateful, and I was happy that she would help me out with that. Um, and then I I was looking forward, and I envisioned her. I was curious what she would find out. Like, I was wondering what help she could give in terms of charities. She always respected my mom too. Um, and That would have been 2016. And then my mom suddenly, I found her dead 2018. I mean, my mom. And then I had to quickly move. I to where, well, next door to where I'm living now. That began in 2019, and really there wasn't much, as I recall, there wasn't much interaction. Um, I had all this time since somewhere close to college graduation, which would be 1998. Um, I had been trying to develop a screenplay that was good enough to be produced, and it was inspired by my attraction to Madonna during college. I felt something like a kinship, or something like, um, I wonder what would happen if I were to meet her in real life, and if she could put away the celebrity nature and the status. I wonder what she would be like as a person. Um, and I wonder if she would appreciate me, if she would like me. I wondered if she would be, um, she would think I'm a smart person or insightful, or she would be impressed by me. Um, so anyway, that's what inspired that. I wanted to impress her, and maybe that if I could get the ball rolling, maybe she could endorse or help support the screenplay, maybe making it into a movie, and then that's by that point I had wanted to make movies in 1998. So I know I'm jumping back in time quite a bit, but so anyway, that's what my one of my focuses had been, to improve that screenplay. Uh, and I've talked about that too on my channel. Um, so, as I recall, there wasn't that much interaction with Punky. Um, and then I was watching last year. I got into watching YouTube videos about lol cows, LOL cows. Uh, these are people uh, who have serious, like, um, emphatic, dramatic um, manipulations done to them, and the videos are very dramatic, and it's like a soap opera. People watch YouTube for the latest um, updates on what this lol cow or some other lol cow did. Look up lol cow, and I don't want to go into it because I don't want to say anything bad about them. They are real people, and it's sad what's happened to them. I mean, well, one in particular. Um, there's one person in particular. It's really sad how people manipulated him psychologically. Um, but he started off as just wanting a girlfriend, and I could sympathize with that very much. by this point, I hadn't really had a girlfriend in my life. I still really haven't. I've had female friends, but I'm looking for somebody Jewish, and I guess that's a whole other thing. So, um, I, I really, I was watching those, and I felt like sympathetic or empathetic. I felt empathetic towards this one little cow, and he got really screwed up, and over time, on YouTube with people manipulating him psychologically. So I sent a text message to Punky, saying, it was a short message. I apologize for whatever I had done or said. Something like, I really value as a friend and whatever, because it was true. I didn't want, and I was concerned that other people might misinterpret it. I wanted to, it would be nice if I could go out on a date with somebody I really like Punky, that was nice, because she, in my sense, I thought she was attractive. But also, I would have just settled for friendship. I just wanted her as a friend. I wanted more interaction with her. Because she made me feel happy, and I wanted her to feel happy, and she said a number of times that I did make her feel happy, and I sensed some sadness, and I know that even before this started, I remember something like middle school or high school, I got an impression like, well, I'll just say there were habits I could get into about her or something. I'll just say that she didn't really seem happy sometimes. And so I I want to make her, so I typed this out in a text, and I sent it, and then within a few moments, now granted, it would be like years or months or something before possibly kind of sort of once in a blue moon maybe getting a response from her, a short response maybe. And here she responds in a few seconds, and she says something like, well, she is not one to text, but if I wanted to talk, um, I can call her in the next few moments. So I called, and we talked for like 2 hours. And this is a work night where I'd have to be working. It was probably a Tuesday or something. I'd have to be working the next morning, get up at 5 and start working. But we talked until I think about 1 o'clock in the morning. And she told me a lot of things. She told me first off, well, she told me that well, first off, her tone was deep, and it seemed sincere and genuine, and that she knew that I was, or she guessed. She said, "You're seeing a therapist, right?" Yeah. Well, tell him or say that I was a dick, meaning her, and that felt a lot. There was a lot of relief from that, because it's something I forgot to mention, that over time, all right, there was a period where I blamed myself for everything. I felt like the worst person possible. I didn't deserve to live. Over time, I started reaching out to friends. This would have been during college years, like when Princess Diana got hit and killed accidentally, and just it. I just anecdotally remember that because I connected with something. I had reached out to a friend and mentioned it. Uh, so it'd been 97 and 98. I was reaching out to friends of hers, or just to classmates, or to people, and asking, like, if they were friends of hers. I was asking, well, Um, can you talk to her? Or could you ask her to please give me some answers, or let me know? Could we talk about could she explain what was going on? Why she um seemed to beckon me, like be okay, and there was an implication like we could be friends, and all of a sudden it would be shut I'd be shut out, or there would be silence suddenly. um and and then with other people, who weren't her friends, they who didn't know her, I just explained that I was going through this experience, and I feel sad, and I'm just trying to figure out what happened. So it was very, very hard to talk. Sometimes a friend would talk with me, or an acquaintance would talk with me on the phone for a while, but that was that one phone call, and he or she wouldn't really have time. Usually he wouldn't have time after that. So I was grateful for the help and possible insights that person could have given. Maybe I was missing something. Maybe I had forgotten something. Maybe I could see something from a different point of view or a different perspective. I just wanted to figure it out, because by this point, and this is the crux, this is basically, this relates to that question people have: why do you hold on to this for so long? Well, I I I guess it's like with my mom. I I felt nurtured by my mom, and I remember the way I had it with my mom was that if I felt pained or hurt, she wanted to make me feel better, or she wanted to learn what could be done to make me feel better. So I figured that's the way everybody was. Um, I was very naive, I guess, or unaware. Um, so I got little answers. I didn't get much of anything. I'll tell you a huge breakthrough I had, and the dramatic nature of the stunning nature of the fact that it was such a breakthrough speaks to the fact that it's been such a long time. It was so different from what I had gotten before. Uh, there's a different John, not the same John who was my close friend. Um, it was in 2019, probably, because I was in this next door apartment. I reached out to this other John who also had a crush on Punky, and he said in so many words, "It wasn't me, it's her." And he had tried to reach out to her. He tried to ask her out, or he tried to befriend her, and she just seemed to non-responsive. I don't remember exactly how he put it, but he just seemed to have a similar experience that I did, and so that made me feel not alone anymore. Um, and I felt really happy about that. I'll tell you his advice. Not that I took it, but I'll give you, just so this is comprehensive, I'll tell you what he advised. He said something like, well, you can try to reach out to her, but I wouldn't advise it, because you may be really hurt, or you may not like what you see, or whatever. I think it's more like you may be hurt. Please don't be hurt. Maybe you shouldn't try to reach out to her, or continue this effort. Try to reach out to her, because maybe you could be hurt. Okay, so then 2019, so 2020. I'm sorry for jumping around a bit in time. So right, so going back to last year, 2022, I think, last April, I texted that, and then we were talking. She and I are talking on the phone, and she said, "You're seeing a therapist," and of course, I had been 2020 around there. I figured I can't get any answers from friends. I can't figure this out. And there were a number of other issues. My mom had died, and I had to be forced out, and I left belongings behind, and whole mess of things. And I haven't been as successful as I wanted to in life, so forth. So I figured, okay, I'm going to pay somebody to sit and listen to me. So I had been doing that, and it wasn't really hasn't been successful. They would just I'm not in therapy now, but for that year, that period, just it was a succession of one after another. It would be on the phone. It wasn't even in person. It was on the phone, and they would just listen. Oh, and I was doing all the talking. I would bring up what topic I wanted to talk about. Nothing. In my opinion, it's like sloppy therapy. I was I was under the impression from movies and so forth that therapy would be where somebody engages you in therapy and asks you probing questions and so forth, challenging questions. But this is nothing like that. So I had to do all this work on my own, even in addition to having therapy, being able to get therapy. I had to do the legwork during the therapy. It's weird. Um, However, one therapist did know somebody at Driver's Village, so I was able to connect. So I'm financing it myself, but it was a good connection in order to get a car. That was nice. It's the only benefit I got out of this whole stuff. But and I guess sometimes I guess it was the benefit of being able to talk about what had happened a few times over and over. Each time I started a new therapist, I'd have to regurgitate it again and again and again. Anyway, so she says, "You're in therapy. You're seeing a therapist." Yeah. Well, say I'm a dick, meaning her, and that was a wonderful moment because she was acknowledging her bad behavior, like that she played some part in it too, that there was that she um that in some sense, number one, things were screwy, and number two, um she was contributing some part to it, at least some part to it. It wasn't me, only me. That felt really reassuring and comforting. So we talked, and she talked about her child. I don't want to get into the gender because that might identify who she is. Um, but it was hopeful. She mentioned liking the certain movie, a bird, Two Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I think it's the one with Jack Nicholson, and she shared certain songs that she said she could really identify with, that spoke to her personally, that seemed to embody her, and that was very touching. And I'm glad that she opened up and she felt comfortable opening up to me about that. And I sent her some song titles that uh, of songs that I identified with, and I mentioned Star Trek, and she said, "You and Star Trek," and well, I'm open to watching it or trying out watching the show. Oh, and internally, I thought, wow, she would really benefit from watching Star Trek because I think it embodies a lot of constructive themes. It's an optimistic outlook on life that maybe she could have benefited from. I always think um, there's no time like the present. You can't go backwards, but there's always time for improvement or change. You can at least from this time forward, you can work towards a happier, more fulfilling life for yourself. So I hope that she would watch the show and maybe she would understand it. Maybe she could understand me better. If nothing else, she could see like a happy world where people were working with each other, and I've said stuff like that before anyway, teamwork and blah blah blah, optimistic, constructive world. So I I looked forward. I hope that I was eager to hear when I was eager for the moment when I would hear from her that she'd watched some of the show, and she mentioned her child, and that I would have a positive influence on the child because um, the child has certain um, the child is shy, I'll put it that way, or whatever. Um, Not necessarily shy, but just I'll leave it at shy. And me being more engaging and more adult and compassionate, maybe I can be a good role model or positive influence. And that made me feel very good because that meant that she trusted me to be around her child, and that she all number one, number two, that she thought I would be a positive influence on her child. And so I then would send her some things. I won't get into what I was sending, but they would be snapshots, it would be photographs, and she would sometimes give compliments and the way I looked and so forth. And um, then she said, "Why don't you try going to a club?" Um, and I thought that was nice. It seemed scary to go to a club like that. I wanted her to go with me. She said she couldn't, and she explained. And that makes sense. There's a certain physical reason why. Why? Um, I understand. So uh, it seemed from that there was a friendship building and things to look forward to in the friendship. That would be part of the friendship. And then all this, and she answered some questions. She didn't answer everything, but she answered some lingering questions I had. And this is 2022 or something. She answered some lingering questions I had from 1994. Finally, it wasn't a lot, it wasn't very much, but at least it was something, and it could answer some things, could put me at a little better ease. Um, so then suddenly, I think in August, sorry, she text texts like a paragraph saying, "Sorry, if sorry, I don't have time for anybody right now." She said more, but like not much more. Basically, I don't have time for anybody right now. Okay, that was a cold door slam. I'm not a door slam, but I mean, it was like I'm left out in the cold, sort of. Okay, um, so I respected that, and um, I don't remember offhand. Maybe I probably sent another message in there. Maybe I did. Maybe I don't remember. I'd have to look through. But some time goes by, and then she sends another message saying, like, justifying she's being truthful about the reason why she she can't really have any friends right now. Oh, okay. Um, okay. So I continue on with my life, and there's something more recent, like the past week. talking with an old classmate. An old classmate pops up, and so I that causes me to think about her, and then fortunately, um, something got unfortunately. Um, Actually, it was the thing with this other person who popped up from the past. Um, I I was distrustful of him, and um, so I post on a Facebook message, and I had been hurt in other suddenly in the past week. So I had been hurt, um, and so I was tired of keeping secrets inside. I was tired of keeping names inside. I was tired of not being able to seemingly trust anybody. So I just mentioned his name and that, and then I mentioned Punky's name, and but not much. I don't remember what I wrote. Um, so then she texts back in a mad way, a short thing that basically, don't call me, don't text me. So it was at that point where um, I thought, well, if I were dead, then maybe um, she would be remorseful. But then um, I'm so last night I'm talking with somebody who knows her. Um, I don't want to get who knows her. Okay, then I'm talking to somebody else who doesn't know her, and I was um, mentioning some of this, and um, he suggests something that I hadn't thought of before. So um, it puts me at ease. It helps me to understand why Punky was reacting and behaving possibly the way she was behaving and reacting the way she was. Um, then of course I was happy and I want to share my happiness over that at work, and some people said, why are you dwelling over this thing 30 years ago? And so thus this video. um, I I wanted to understand because it affected me. I feel stunted, and I feel it took a part of my life. It spent a part of my life trying to figure out what was going on, because I guess this is the what have we learned, ladies and gentlemen, part of this video. Um, I I grew up on television. I grew up on the premise with my mom. We were very open about how we felt and what we were going through, and so I figured that um, everybody was rational, and like for the most part were decent. And and you could go up to somebody, maybe some days were bad days, or maybe they weren't feeling well or something, but you could talk or at least explain what was going through your mind, or why you did what you did, and ask maybe for some explanation what why they did what they did. Or see, there's another TV show, Three's Company, that I had grown up with. A lot of sitcoms I had grown up with, particularly Three's Company. Basically every episode was about a misunderstanding. Almost every episode was a formula where there was a weird misunderstanding, and things weren't what they as bad as it seemed. And at the end of the episode, there was this big revelation where they learned, oh my gosh, you were so foolish. and it wasn't so bad. It was okay, but we made a big deal out of it. So that's how from a very young age, that's how I entered into the world. Really, that perhaps had an impact, maybe more, in shaping how I perceive the world. Okay, I guess that's the end of the video. It's all I have to say, all I can think of to say. And I hope I haven't hurt anybody in making this video. Um, I don't know if I'll talk to her again, but um, I guess what I should also say that um, she did send something very nice, even um, even after that thing in the past week. She sent something that um, said that she does care about me, and that she does care about me. That's nice. I wanted, if she's watching this or whatever she gets to watching this somehow, I wanted her to know that. Um, that was nice. So um, that's it, I guess. I don't know if I'll make another video. I don't know about the future of this channel, but I wanted to get this out there because I've been under stress in the past week. Well, yeah, in the past week, starting like last week and going into this week, um, over something else, and that um, segued into this. I mean, kind of it indirectly related to this, um, and um, I thought like I don't I don't know if I'll ever write anything about this again, experience long thing again. So that's why I wanted to make this video. Okay, bye. And I imagine some people would make fun of me for posting this. So at this point, I really don't care anymore. Um, I'm tired of this.